Hadewijch of Brabant. A woman with a name. So right there, we have stuff to deal with. We have stuff to make some sense of. She feels good putting her name on this. Maybe she is more courageous than the guys. Maybe she's just going softer on the Christian church. She is not necessarily part of the Galiardic tradition. She is expressing views. Historically, she was expressing views that were borderline concerning to an awful lot of church officials, borderline heretical as well. But we don't need to go too deep into that. I want to sort of touch on that, let you know that it's out there as context, but we don't need to dwell. The cult of love. Cult, again, the next little datum of information we have in this. We know it's a woman. We know that she's a she is a she. We know that she has her name on it. Now we see the title, The Cult of Love. Cult is not a very churchy word. Cult is usually a pejorative. It's a small sect. Sounds kind of nefarious. A cultic practice was generally something attributed to the pagan forebears of the Roman era, where they had polytheistic, almost shamanistic in some cases, practices which would be considered idolatrous to the mainstream Christian movement that was organized within the Vatican. A cult is usually one that practices some form of interaction with the spiritual realm, let's say. Trying to think, probably the easiest modern reference to this would be like voodoo or witches or something like that, where you're channeling in the dark forces to affect things in a divine way, which only God in a monotheistic culture is supposed to do. But anyway, first line, familiar, the birds. More birds. There's a very birdy community here. The birds have long been silent that were blithe here before. Their blitheness has departed. They have lost their summer now. They would swiftly sing again if that summer came again, which they have chosen above all and for which they were born. One hears it in their voices then. I'll say no more about birds' laments. Their joy, their pain is quickly gone. I have more grievous cause to moan. Love, to whom we should aspire, weighs us down with her noble cares. So we chase after false delights, and love cannot enfold us then. Ah, what has baseness done to us? Who shall erase that faithlessness? The mighty ones, whose hands is strong, it is on them I still rely, who work at all times in love's bond. Heedless of pain, grief, tragedy, they want to ride through all the land that lovers loving by the love have found. So perfect it is their noble heart. They know what love can teach by love, how love exalts lovers by love. Why then should anyone refuse, since by loving love can be won? Why not ride longing through the storm, trusting in the power of love, aspiring to the cult of love? Love's peerlessness will then be seen there in the brightness of love's dawn, where for love's sake is shunned to pain, and no pain caused by love weighs down. Often I call for help as a lost one, but then when you come close, my dear one, with new solace you bear me up, and with high spirits I ride on. Sport with my dear so joyously, as if north and south and east and west all lands belong to me. Then suddenly I am dashed down. Oh, what use to tell my pain? First impressions. Really like that word love. That's popping up an awful lot. Dare I say a little repetitive? Some of those are downright tongue twistery. Why not ride longing through the storm, trusting to the power of love, aspiring to the cult of love? Love's peerlessness can be seen there in the brightness of love's dawn. The land that lovers loving by love have found, so perfect is their noble heart. Yeah, that word is just cropping up an awful lot. That makes it conspicuous. That makes it curious. That's the first thing I would say that really jumps out at this poem. And when something is conspicuous and curious, that is the poem saying, hey, come here, look at this. This is what I'm about. You can write a paper on me. Love. From the very beginning, we're set up with the birds, right? We get a whole stanza about more birds. And then, at the beginning of the second stanza, enough of the birds. Just dispels it. I'll say no more of birds' laments. I don't care about birds. Yeah, it's a symbol. Get used to it. Who cares? I got better things to do. I don't want to talk about birds. I want to talk about love. I'm not going to talk about abstract metaphors and similes, birds, nature. Love. But not just love. Again, translation, orthography, the printing of these things, always a question. But when you see the word love capitalized in the middle of a sentence, why would they do that? Yes?
It's a noun.
It's a noun, yeah. But they have the word love in there a couple of times, lowercase.
It's not a noun then.
I believe it's cropping up a couple of times here. Love. Now again, translation, problematic. Love is often a nickname of different figures. Figures like, well, sometimes Venus. Sometimes Venus's son, Cupid. And these are pagan figures. Here we are talking about love as if it is a name. Love, capitalized like a name. And this is coming from a nice, devout Christian girl. But talking about pagan stuff. And not just that, but pagan figures who represent one thing or another. Venus is the goddess of love. She represents, symbolizes, has a metaphorical value of love, passion, desire. So having started this poem, kicking off the idea of, I'm not going to talk in all those crazy bird metaphors, enough of that. Now she's settling back in and says, all right, but let's talk about other metaphors for love. So there's that sense of the silliness of it. Sense of a little bit of insincerity, perhaps. A little bit of the falseness and misunderstanding inherent in reading. Because if we're trying to interpret this through normal means of decoding, well, we can say that we're going to deal with things as they are and not talk with metaphors, but then we slip right back into it. We have no way of talking about certain things without metaphors. And metaphors and similes and representations of all kind, art of all kind, is inexact, unpredictable, and likely to go haywire in the interpretation process. Much like, I would say, the person who's trying to read nature as the text of God. Note a couple other little points in here. Love to whom we should aspire weighs us down with her noble cares. That idea of weight is another big cliche of the era. The idea, and you see it a lot in Dante, is that the soul is weighed down by its sinful nature, its physicality, and kept on earth. But the more you dispense with that, the more you scrape that off, you reject your physicality, you embrace your spiritual nature, more and more you become lighter and you ascend up toward heaven and God. So here she's saying love, with all the connotations of that word, to whom we should aspire towards love, weighs us down with her noble cares. Because love, at least on earth, generally has a physical component. Perhaps that's good, perhaps that's bad. It is part of God's design, whether as a challenge to us to overcome, or a simple engine of procreation, is unstated. But there is baked into that questionable notion of physicality, our carnal nature. Are we more spirit or more body? So we chase after false delights, and love cannot enfold us then. I love that false delights thing. And here I can't help but imagine, well, it doesn't even really matter, I would say, in this. I mean, you could write it a certain way. It doesn't really matter in that this is a woman writing. If you are married to someone, or at least have an understanding with them, and they go out and they get cuddly with somebody else, they are chasing carnal, physical sensation rather than the kind of pure love that a monogamous relationship brings. And here you can almost see, like, you know, the woman who's had a philandering husband going out a few too many times a week, and she's just frustrated with it. Who shall erase that faithlessness? You can sense that sense of disgust. But still, it's part of human nature, that physical bit. Why then should anyone refuse, since by loving love can be won? Why not ride, longing through the storm, trusting to the power of love, aspiring to the cult of love? Love's peerlessness will then be seen there in the brightness of love's dawn, where no love's sake is shunned no pain, and no pain caused by love's weighed down. this kind of, you can hear it in the language. Again, sometimes it helps to read these things out loud, so it's not just word, 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 but starts to pick up a little bit of a pace as it charges along emotionally, passionately, dare I say lustfully, after its meaning. Another metaphor in the storm. She's abandoned birds and that kind of nature, but now she's falling into storm nature. The idea of an emotional storm, an emotional turbulence, and finding a metaphor in a weather event, let's say. Why not ride longing through the storm, trusting in the power of love, aspiring to the cult of love, the cult of love, the belief in love as a religious practice unto itself. This is key. The idea that being in love is itself a spiritual activity. Loving someone is in its own way, a participation in the divine. The emotional context of being head over heels in love is almost exactly like that sense of wonder of looking up at the night sky. That sense of euphoria, that sense of bewilderment, confusion, vulnerability, insecurity, uncertainty. But at the same time, we are drawn to it. We can't turn away. That is the power of God, and that is the cult of love. That by being in love, we participate in divinity itself. Love is its own religion. That is a key element throughout the Middle Ages in European art. In that last stanza, often I call for help as a lost one. Whenever you see the word like or as, we know from high school we're in the realm of a simile. Thank you. Yes. Which is a metaphor with an actual explicit connection from one thing to the other. So again, we brought up birds, got rid of them, said, yeah, I'm just gonna tell it like it is. I'm not gonna deal with representations. I'm not gonna deal with metaphors or similes or anything like that. Then they sort of slip back in with the storm one, but here, a lost one. Physically, literally lost, like, excuse me, can you give me directions? How do we get to Times Square from here? No. Lost as in metaphorically lost. Lost as in spiritually lost. Lost as in feeling uncertain about your place in the universe. As a lost one. But then when you come close, my dear one, with new solace you bear me up, and with high spirit I ride on, sport with my dear so joyously, as if north and south and east and west all lands belong to me. That's the first time that word you has popped up. This is a direct address. Who is you here? Who's she talking to? Her beloved? What?
Our lover.
Her lover. Very possibly. That cadence of the language suggests a kind of whirlwind of passion. But then when you come close, my dear one, with new solace you bear me up, and with high spirit I ride on. Sport with my dear so joyously, as if north and south and east and west all lands belong to me. You can hear that passion surging underneath that. But the very devout theme, I would say, or well, the specifically spiritual theme throughout the entire poem of experiencing divinity one-to-one. That opens up other possibilities of me. That sense of thrill doesn't just come from, a little brush up against somebody in the dark of night. That sense of thrill can come from something else, from someone else. And here, even though it is not explicit, I would say that there is a distinct possibility that the you is Christ. Often I call for help as a lost one. Well, like I said, that could be spiritually lost. When you are spiritually lost, you call on the divine world, perhaps, for help, for guidance, for solace, consolation. Often I call for help as a lost one, but then when you come close, my dear one, with new solace, you bear me up. You bear me up. That is a very frequent refrain among Christians, among believers of countless faiths, honestly, but here specifically identifying the carnal God made man. And with high spirit, again, these words are intentional. I ride on sport with my dear so joyously as if north and south and east and west all lands belong to me. North, south, east, and west, we're talking about the entire globe there. So that's not necessarily something bounded by strict physicality, by the simple distinctions of the human realm, but perhaps something much larger than that. What can traverse the entire globe? Well, God. But then, that last couplet. We have been led to this ecstasy of physical or spiritual or perhaps both consummation. And what happens after the apex? The fall. Then suddenly I am dashed down. Oh, what use to tell my pain? She has been taken to the heights to experience something very high. And what is very high? God. And after that, crashing back down. Now, there's something very theological in this, but we don't need to go there. But I think we can all identify with highs and lows, and the simple vulnerability that comes with these twists of fate. When we go from such joy to such crushing defeat, suddenly and with no warning, no expectation. We thought we had it all together, and then the inevitable. Suddenly I am dashed down. Oh, what use to tell my pain? It's the anti-confession. I can't even really speak about it. It won't do any good. It's a kind of existential confusion at this point. Borderline depression. This incomprehensible universe has shattered this woman. And the you might be a lover, might be Christ. The woman might be describing a physical relationship, might be describing an emotional relationship, might be describing a spiritual relationship. We don't know. She might be talking about everything on a representative level, as a metaphor or a simile, or as art. There's a lot of very conscious art going on here with that pacing of the language and the representation of that. When the words pick up the pace, you get the sense that things are getting very, very heated and very excited, and oh my God, what are they doing? That is art. And you don't know if that's art or if it's real. You don't know if it's spirit or if it's physical. You don't know if it's divine or worldly. You're just caught in the middle of it. It's like the world's most elaborate Venn diagram, and you are stuck right in the center. You have no idea where anything is because you're being pulled by all of these different poles.